Welcome, thank you for being here. This is our Classroom to Career series, sponsored by the School of Arts and Science, and I'm very, very happy and proud to have one of our wonderful alumni here, alumnus, Chuck Marino. Let's give him a big hand. Thank you. The Classroom to Career series is something we've been doing for probably about 6 or 7 years now, and what we want to demonstrate to our students is that your Iona liberal arts education gives you a foundation to do many things in your career moving forward. And so regardless of what your major is, you have to look at your education here in its entirety. And so all of the skills that you get from your liberal arts education allow you to have a very fulfilling life and career, and you're not pigeonholed into doing any one thing. And so we always look for our alumni who best demonstrate that. And I'm going to call you Chuck. Is it okay?
That's fine.
All right. It really is a outstanding demonstration of that. So he was a criminal justice major here. Graduated in 1995, I believe. That was 1 year before I started as a faculty member here, by the way. And so it's going to be your 30th anniversary this year. Congratulations.
Thank you. Very old.
Not as old as me. But again, he finished as a criminal justice major and went into some parts of his career that you would expect of a criminal justice major, but had an outstandingly successful career, okay, at the local and then also at the end at the national level, where he provided security for people in the White House and the administration, and used that knowledge and all the knowledge that he gained to then pivot into other aspects, all right? So he's an author, as you can see here. So he has published this very timely book, Terrorists on the Border, and in our country. So we have a few copies here, so depending on questions, we might be giving a few out. But he did that. Then he also started his own company, Sentinel, all right? He'll talk about that, and he provides advice for major corporations in terms of providing security for their executives. And he's also provides expertise on various news media in terms of his expertise on terrorism and security, on Fox and on Newsmax. So he's had a very varied career, and again, a great demonstration of how your Iona education sets you up for success. And so without any further ado, I'm going to have Chuck talk a little bit about himself, and then we're going to do a little Q&A, and then towards the end we'll have you guys ask questions as well. Chuck?
Thank you very much, Joe. Good to be here. Everyone can hear me okay, I hope. And look, it's great to be back here at Iona. I wish I had more time to come back more frequently, but the school looks amazing, and that's a big thanks to the faculty and the staff, and again the demand from students coming here. It just is a best-in-class location, and I've got great memories from here, received a great education. I can tell you in my experience around the world, a lot of people know Iona, and chances are you're going to run into somebody that went to Iona, no matter where you are. So as small of a school as this is, I find it's got a really big influence around the world, which is just simply amazing considering the amount of time that I do travel around the world, and the people that you run into here and their experiences are just incredible. So as Joe said, I graduated from here, worked for the Bureau of Fraud Investigation in New York City, was a criminal justice major here, kind of got my feet wet down in New York City, conducting investigations, fraud investigations. And then from there, I went and joined the United States Secret Service, where I served for 2 decades. And started my career in New York City in our office there, and then went on to provide protection for Presidents Clinton, Bush, Obama, and I was with Vice President Biden, then Vice President Biden, for an extensive amount of time. And then I went out to California to run our office out in San Francisco for all of Northern California, to oversee both our protective and investigative missions out there. When I finished there at the Secret Service, it was time to then go into the private sector, and I went to go work for a little company known as Oracle, and where I was responsible for protecting all of their executive leadership, creating a global protection program that consisted of an intelligence program, a physical security program, secure transportation, secure air travel, you name it, and there was about a dozen executives within the company that I was responsible for. So it was a great organization. I stayed there several years, and what I found while I was there was, I started to get asked my opinion more frequently from other people and other corporations, and I get bored easily, so I said, well, why service just one place when I can start my own company and do even more cool things all at once, and also hire some great people, colleagues from the FBI, from the CIA, from MI6 in London, and that's the team we have now at my company, Sentinel. And we provide strategic security advice to Fortune 500 companies, professional sports leagues, athletes, high-profile individuals, high net worths, and other organizations. And the work is exactly as I thought it would be. It's very satisfying when you're helping people stay safe, but ultimately you're always protecting a brand of some kind, right? So it's whether it's an individual brand or an organizational brand. There are a lot of things that can be disrupted due to a security event. We saw that recently with the CEO being assassinated from United Healthcare down in Manhattan, and we see the importance of having protective assets in some way around you, and the simple fact is, regarding CEOs of any organization, is that they're not going to please all the people all the time. And that goes for both internally and externally, primarily with customers. And unfortunately, you need to take that into account. And that's where a strong intelligence program comes into play, with threat and vulnerability risk assessments, to make sure that the identified threats are mitigated to the greatest extent possible. As far as the new stuff, it's incredible. I never planned on doing it. I gotta be honest with you, it's 8 years now that I've been talking about national security, homeland security, and law enforcement issues on TV, and if you would have asked me while I was here at Iona if that's something I would have done, I probably would have laughed at you. And because it's a whole different skill set, I've always been required to communicate clearly, effectively, to audiences, but not at a national level like that, not in a TV news environment where it's running 24/7, and every single minute of that 24/7 they're trying to squeeze in as much as you can. So imagine, being on live TV and talking and having somebody in your ear saying, let's go faster, we have more questions for you. So it's amazing, but I love it. It allows me to, do my company, manage the TV responsibilities, which are fantastic. It keeps me apprised of all the going-ons in the world. Kind of forces me to focus in and think about the strategy. Is there a strategy? If not, why not? If there is a strategy, is it working? If it's not working, why not? And then I also am an adjunct professor at the University of South Carolina, where I only teach during the fall semester. I wish I had more time, but I teach a course called The Politics of National Security. And it's the intersection of where national security meets politics, and national security strategy, how that's created, and the influence of things like political polling, right, come into play. And so when you think the answer is clear, like, you know, of course it's common sense. You've got to secure the borders to have a secure homeland. You need to know who's coming into the country. And then you start to introduce these political things, and you go, well, wait a minute. I thought this was always about my safety and security. I thought that was always going to be the priority for a president of the United States. Right. And as you can tell from the book, that wasn't the case. And we don't care about why. We just want to know, does it make sense or does it not make sense? Does it fly in the face of best practices to protect the country, or does it not? And what other challenges from outside of the United States can impact that, influence it? I think that's all I have to say right now.
I know. Well,
You really got me going, and you didn't have to say a word.
I thought I was going to ask some questions, but that's okay. No, that's fine. I mean, that's very good. No, you touched upon some of the question I had prepared, but that's great. But let's go back. Okay, let's go back. Let's learn a little bit about you. Why did you attend Iona?
So back when you had a hockey team, I played hockey. But I got to tell you, and I grew up locally, like very locally here in New Rochelle, and I can tell you, Iona always had such a great reputation, and I love the size. I love the intimacy, the connection, the small class sizes, the ability to really learn and ask questions and have attention paid to you, and plus, there's just some really good people that come to school here and work here. And so I enjoyed my time here. In a nutshell, that's why I came here. And it was great. It was right close proximity to the city. I had a lot of friends. You know, I went to high school right up the street, which is also the size of a college. And so I liked the feel of this school, and I had a lot of friends that ended up coming here. So it really proved to be a perfect fit.
Right, it's terrific. And you know, there was an old branding we had, and you probably recall it. I don't know if not many people in the audience do, but there was a branding, a commercial that said, "Iona, the proof is in the people." You remember that one?
I remember that.
And to me, I know we have a lot of different branding, but to me that still rings so true.
Yeah, I was not asked to be in the commercial, by the way.
Well, I might be a little I'm going to take a little sidetrack. Who's your hockey team?
Oh, the Rangers.
All right, very good. I'm glad you didn't say Canes or anything like that. I had to do that. Sorry, I'm a hockey fan as well. All right, so as I said, you majored in criminal justice. Clearly, that was a foundation for your career. In terms of your entire education, what other courses do you think helped you in your career? And in terms of maybe giving our students some advice, what besides what they're doing in the major, what would you tell them to do to help them in terms of their future?
Yeah, I'm actually having this conversation with my daughter, who's a freshman at the University of South Carolina. And we just had the whole, double major conversation. And she took AP classes in high school, so she's ahead of the game by a little over a semester. And so now she's looking how to spend those dollars, right? And my approach, based on my experience, is, she's majoring in psychology, she's interested in forensic psychology. So my approach is start that master's program. But this is my own individual opinion on that. I think coming to any profession, which, by the way, many people don't realize that I worked with people from all different backgrounds in the Secret Service. There were people that were education majors, business majors, you name it, psychology. It was not all cookie cutter criminal justice majors. coming into the Secret Service or going into the FBI or other agencies. That's just not the diversity they're looking for. Complex investigations, especially financial investigations, require critical thinkers, and you need different perspectives on how to solve a complex investigation or crimes. So it's very important to get that diversity of education, just as it's important to get diversity of background to these types of jobs. So I got lucky during my time in the Secret Service. I was actually sent to the National Defense University in Washington, D.C., the National War College, which is a university where I got my master's in 10 months, full-time in national security strategy. This is a school where you have military, State Department. For example, no one in the military can get promoted to the general rank unless they go to either the National War College or the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. The ICAF, as we call it, focuses on logistics expertise, and the National War College is known for national security strategy planning. It's where Colin Powell went, Admiral Stavridis, who was the NATO Supreme Commander. Any general that you meet, and that I meet to this day, they either went to one of those two schools. So I've run into ambassadors around the world that have gone to the National War College. And so just like Iona, you're finding a lot of similarities and common ground, which get these relationships off to a great start.
Your thesis at the War College, did you not receive some accolades for that?
I
gotta do that.
I did, and so my thesis when I was at the National War College, which garnered a lot of attention, was actually on the Mexican cartels, and whether or not they should be treated as a law enforcement problem. Previous designation up until this recent administration, the Trump administration, previous designation was TCOs, transnational criminal organizations, which means the U.S. approached the problem as a law enforcement problem. In the book, I articulate that based on poor policies the past 4 years, the cartels have never been as powerful as they are now, both operationally and financially, and I called for the redesignation of the cartels to foreign terrorist organizations, which President Trump did do. Now, what does that mean in a nutshell? What it means is you've got more resources that can be put on the table. You're now introducing use of the military. You're talking about tougher diplomacy, which we're seeing. Things like tariffs or withholding money that typically would go to aid for these countries to provide public safety and security. Financial restrictions, things like sanctions. You know, all of the instruments of power that the United States has, which is a lot. The military boils it down to dime. Diplomacy, information, then communication, messaging, military, and economic. Those are all the levers of power that the United States has at its disposal. So within all of those categories, you talk about diplomacy and you say, Chuck, that's pretty broad. Well, yeah, it is. And it's up to the national security expert strategist to identify what tools within the diplomatic community are going to be used and leveraged as we negotiate. Negotiation's not easy. It's probably one of the hardest things in government and in life, but I can tell you that a good negotiator is very, very tough to find. It is a discipline. You have to be trained. It is everything that you would imagine, not showing your hand too early, not giving up too much information, and also carrying out what the President of the United States wants you to do. That's the beauty of the President of the United States. He oversees the entire executive branch of the government. So essentially, everybody works for him, except Congress and the judicial branch, right? So there's a lot of power there and a lot of tools.
What were your aspirations or plans after graduation? Because again, you've gone in so many different directions, but immediately, you know, as a graduating senior, where did you think you were going to go? What were your aspirations at that moment?
Well, I knew I was going to work because that's what my parents told me that was going to happen. So I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what field I wanted to go into. Obviously, you know, criminal justice major aside, I knew ultimately that I wanted to go into the federal level. And it was narrowed down between the FBI, a very large organization, and the Secret Service, a much smaller organization. You know, the thing with the Secret Service is you can go anywhere around the world, and when you step off that plane, you're typically going to know the agent that's meeting you. There's a chance that you've worked together several times before. The FBI is a very big agency, again, several thousand employees, 35,000 employees, agents, and so a very important mission. And yes, friendships, you know, can be established, but as far as the feel of the work environment, I liked the closeness that is required in the investigative mission, but even more so in the protective mission. Very few agencies, if any, have an investigative and a protective mission. And so you could go into work on a Monday, conduct investigations, and during the day and later that night put on a suit, and you're standing next to a former president. So your days were really, they were predictable, but they felt unpredictable. And if you like variety in your work weeks, which were 7 days most times, then that was the job. That was the job for you.
Excellent. Early in your career, right, you were based locally, but could you tell us maybe about some of the breaks or opportunities that came to you and how you took advantage of them?
Yeah, everybody needs a break, and I gotta tell you, it was another Iona graduate that was in the Secret Service that gave me my break, Nick Trotta, who is a great alumni and just a fantastic person, and was my boss off and on when I worked in the Secret Service in various assignments. And what I can tell you is that was back in the day where recruiting was more of a personal touch. You didn't go on the internet, you didn't file an application. I completed my application, which by the way was a gazillion pages, with a typewriter. With a typewriter. And that's where, when you made a mistake, you actually cried. Right? And the whiteout was used extensively. But you know, so that's the way recruiting was done. Now it's like any other job, right? You go to the website, you click apply, and you're either going to have the initial qualifications for consideration or you're not. This was a much more up close and personal relationship, and that brought in a lot more knowledge about what the job was going to be and what it wasn't going to be, right? Was it going to be good for quality of life? Not really. Not really. So, you know, the hours are long, and so you've got to have those expectations going in so you know exactly what you're dealing with. I think we need to bring more of that back, as a matter of fact, and I think that's true with any job. But especially in the government, especially in national security positions, I think these agencies need to take a lot more time and consider their approach to make sure that there's a full understanding of the job. Because I can tell you there are aspects of it that is just shock and awe. You know, it's like, wait a minute, you want me to stand in that doorway in the most uncomfortable pair of shoes available to man or woman and not move for 16 hours? Yeah, it's worth considering, right? So you want to know the good, the bad, so I'm a big fan of recruiting with the negatives.
Interesting. In terms of Homeland Security, because you served in the Department of Homeland Security, and you were instrumental in implementing, if you see something, say something. Could you tell us about that program, how you were able to foster it, and clearly tell us about its impact at national, regional, local levels?
Yeah, so another opportunity I had was to serve as the senior law enforcement advisor to then Secretary Janet Napolitano at the Department of Homeland Security, where I was the only career official gun carrier, law enforcement on her staff. Everybody else were political appointees, and I was there as a career official, which was good, which was I wasn't involved in the politics of it. I didn't worry about it. Again, in my world, there was right and there was wrong, and there were things that were going to either enhance the safety and security of the American people or not. And one of those things that we did was, and there was a group of us, we nationalized the See Something, Say Something campaign. Not just what it would do, but how to talk about it, how to make people feel comfortable with it. And where we landed was that, look, everybody needs to be active in their own safety and security. I can tell you all day long how to protect yourself. If you're not active in actually deploying those recommendations, then nothing is going to work. And you all do it every day, whether you're walking to your car at a certain time of day. These are things that we do naturally, and sometimes there's things that you actually have to think about and go out of your way and make a conscious effort to make sure you're enhancing your personal safety. But we started deploying it with professional sports, and we announced it in I want to say it was 2011 during the Super Bowl. And it was a tough sell. I'm not going to lie to you. I had some people say, "Chuck, I get it. I don't know. I don't know if we want to do this. I don't know if we want people to feel like the people they're sitting next to are spying on them." And it took a lot of education to say, this is getting people involved in not only protecting themselves, but protecting the country. And if you go back and you think about all the numerous incidents you hear about on the news and things like that, a lot of them involve what? Tips, right? Somebody from the public saw something that just didn't sit right. And we're not saying that, and when we unveiled this program, we weren't saying that you had to be the individual that remedied it. We said, no, you call the experts and let them figure it out, and then you're out. But you have a role here to play, and so there was a little guilt that was used to get more people involved, to identify a potential threat or concern, and then let them trust that the experts are going to resolve it and resolve it in the right way. And then the other program, want me to go into that?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, the other program that was added a lot of my gray hair was when the Department of Homeland Security was created. Then Governor Tom Ridge, who became the first advisor for Homeland Security and then Secretary for Homeland Security, created the threat level, the color-coded threat level, if you remember that. And that was red, orange, yellow, and green. And it was called the HSAS, the Homeland Security Advisory System. Well, in 2011, The secretary and the president at the time, President Obama, they said, you know, that this color-coded threat system was great when the department was new, but now we've got more capabilities, we're able to share more information, and we want to replace this. We want to replace it. So I was part of the team that came up with its replacement, the National Terrorism Advisory System, the NTAS. And that was, one, we'd be able to share information with the public so that they can take part in their own safety and security and have the information that they needed to do so. We made sure that we put time limits on these bulletins, which were either imminent, right, or as an FYI, here's what else we've got going on. So there's only 2 levels, right? And they couldn't stay active any longer than 30 days without the government either saying the threat is no longer persisting, or it is, and now we're going to re-explain it to you and tell you why we're extending it. So we introduced more transparency in the system, more accountability, and more of an understanding to the American public regarding the threats that are going on and how they were impacting the U.S. I was given 90 days to implement that by the President of the United States. 90 days. That means getting every single major police department on board, right? We had the city of New York at the time that was at level orange. And so we had to make sure that if we announced this new system, that they were briefed on it, that they understood if we launched this new system, we couldn't have New York saying, yeah, that's great, we're still at orange. It would undercut every single one of our efforts. So again, a lot of work, a lot of coordination, a lot of communication. There are a lot of parties with vested interests in what the Department of Homeland Security does each and every day. Think about it, travel, trade, right? I mean, you're talking about citizenship, you're talking, you know, the entirety of immigration. You're talking about, you know, Mexico, our largest trading partner, Canada, not too far behind. You know, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, it's not China, it's not Russia, it's our closest neighbors. And so how do you do that? How do you protect something like borders and then facilitate legal trade and travel?
What do you think are the, you know, biggest threats right now to our nation in terms of like homeland security?
Well, currently, as a country, you know, I say this often, we face more threats from more places at any time in our history. And those are just not traditional physical threats. Of course, there's cyber, which is a huge issue. There are thousands of cyber events that go on each and every day, both from state actors and non-state actors. Some of those non-state actors are acting on behalf of state actors, but there's the plausible deniability thing that you typically see out of China and Russia and some others. But, you know, these threats are coming at us in so many different ways that this is why the foundational security, as I talk about, is so important. I mean, look at what's going on around the world, right? You still have Russia, Ukraine, you've got the Middle East with Israel, you've got China and Taiwan, and again, just because they have regional issues, they also have issues with us as well, right? So how do these threats metastasize, if you will? So, for example, it's very concerning to me when during the border crisis we see a 2,500% increase of Chinese nationals, primarily males, coming into the United States. And so it's concerning for a number of reasons, but these are the top. Number one, the PRC, the People's Republic of China, knows everything that's happening in China. So if we think that thousands of Chinese nationals are just up and leaving the country without the government knowing, that's craziness, right? Now also keep in mind, China also produces all of the synthetics that are used to make fentanyl. Okay, synthetics come from China, they go to the cartels finish making the product, and the product comes into the United States. Close to 100,000 a year are killed by fentanyl. Fentanyl has made its way into every drug, including marijuana. So essentially, nothing is safe. So if 100,000 people are dying a year at the hands of China and the cartels, I would say we should be worried. And here's the other concern. If the cartels are willing to work with China to kill hundreds of thousands of Americans via fentanyl, what makes us think that they're not working with terrorist organizations originating from special interest locations where we know these terrorist organizations are up and running with a deep hatred for the United States, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, right? So, you know, there was something cited in the September 11th Commission report, and it was that, you know, the September 11th attacks were able to be carried out because the United States suffered from a failure of imagination. We never thought that terrorists would hijack airplanes and fly them into buildings, killing thousands of Americans. And shame on us for not thinking that way, right? How you have to take the adversary's point of view and how can you hurt this country? So to allow an adversary, China is a competitor, yes. Is China an adversary? China's an adversary. You know, part of my work is you gotta call it as it is, or you're not gonna come anywhere near dealing with the problem the way it's gotta be approached. Okay? So China, adversary. Russia, adversary. Iran, adversary. Like, you better know how you're classifying these countries. Yeah, sure, we're all competitors. Okay, big deal. But are they adversaries? And so you've got to call it as it is. And so, you know, these threats that we're facing, a lot of this, and this is what I teach in my class, is, you know, the American people think that the safety and the security of them and their families in the country is always going to be the #1 priority of the commander-in-chief. And I think history teaches us a very, very powerful lesson in that respect. And the answer is it hasn't. Because if it has, I wouldn't have written the book. Right? And we wouldn't be talking about the cartels having more money, right? We wouldn't be talking about taxpayers spending billions and billions of dollars. We wouldn't talk about crimes being committed, suspected terrorists making their way into the country. We have hundreds and hundreds of encounters on the border. We have probably close to 3 million what are called gotaways that have made their way into the country. We have no idea who they are. They've evaded arrest. So it's a complicated threat landscape, and you know, this is what the president and the White House and the national security staff have to think about each and every day.
You know, you bring up some interesting points, and I'm thinking about, you know, the discussion here, and I'm thinking about 9/11. And my question to you, you know, being in the national security arena, is about complacency, right? When something happens, for a short period of time, everybody's focused, everybody's thinking about security at all different levels. But then, maybe people have short memories, maybe people are distracted. How do you deal with that? How do you, you know, try to keep people's focus on security when maybe we haven't had a, you know, knock on wood, a major event within our nation in the recent, you know, in the recent past?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when and it's a great question, by the way, Joe. When I was writing the book, do you know how many people told me This happens under every administration. It'll work itself out. And I was like, not this time, I'm telling you. I think this is gonna end up being like in the top 3 issues for the 2024 presidential election. No way, Chuck, you're wrong. You know, you're raising alarms, this has always gone on. I said, no, I don't think so. And we were right. So, let's look what was born as a result of the attacks on September 11th. You now have arguably the second or third largest bureaucracy that was created under the 2002 Homeland Security Act, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, right? Now a 60,000 person department. And it's never been given a look. It's never been given another look since its creation. It absorbed all these different agencies like Customs and Border Protection, the Secret Service, FEMA, the Coast Guard, and it created a headquarters element, an administrative element. So this is now a huge, bloated department. You're seeing it get looked at now under DOJ, but it's never been given a look from the sense of, was it a smart idea to move the Secret Service into the Department of Homeland Security? I argue no, it wasn't, and I'll tell you why. And is the department running as it was intended? Is it effective and is it efficient in everything that it needs to do to protect the homeland? And the answer to that is no. There's efficiencies that can be made everywhere, in every department. So what makes us think that the Department of Homeland Security is running the way it was initially designed? Why would you bring in an agency, for example, like the Secret Service, who is the big fish in the Department of Treasury, had their budgeting needs were met, and then introduce them into this large bureaucratic department where now they have to fight for money to protect the President of the United States against agencies that need what? Helicopters, ice cutters, right? I mean, you know, it's contradictory in some cases. And it becomes a very hard grab for money for these agencies. And so as a result, you know, an agency like the Secret Service and others, they weren't the only one, they suffered originally when they got brought into that department financially. They were unable to do a lot of the things that they wanted to do and needed to do, primarily with manpower, to maintain the ranks and the resources that they needed to conduct the mission. That's fine, you can catch up, but when you start falling behind on things like equipment and hiring, and then that becomes a huge systemic issue. You don't just snap your finger and somebody says, you know what, we were wrong the past 4 years, here's $60 billion, go fix it. I've got to go hire the people, right? I've got to interview them, I've got to polygraph them, I've got to, I mean, you know, it takes over a year to hire somebody in the Secret Service traditionally. So, you know, all of these agencies, you know, are fighting the good fight under DHS, but I think you're going to see the current administration give all of these departments a very good look, and they need to.
And, you know, we had an assassination attempt in this past summer, right, on candidate Trump at the time. Clearly there were mistakes made. Were the mistakes due to some of the structural problems you're talking about now and funding? Tell us a little bit about, you know, what should have been done differently and how we could get there.
Okay, so massive failure by the Secret Service. They're responsible when it comes to the protection of the president or other protectees that they're mandated to protect. They're responsible for the creation of the security plan and the effective implementation of the security plan. There is no, oh, I thought a cop was going to be on that roof. That doesn't pass the smell test. If there was supposed to be a police officer on that roof, then somebody should have literally walked a police officer up to that roof. I mean, there's no way a building like that, as close as it was, should have been uncovered. So totally unacceptable, and there needs to be accountability for that. This goes back to, you know, the staffing challenges. I was never considered for the Secret Service unless, you know, you had at least 3 years of work experience. They wanted to see that you could hold a job down, that you know, how you would do in real life, right? Before you know, and what happens is you start to see some of these standards go down, right? And this brings me to another point, which is controversial, and I'm happy to talk about it when we're done here. And that is the role of DEI. Let me tell you my approach to that. My approach is, I want to go out, and it's true for my company too, because if I don't do this, if I don't practice what I'm about to preach, then I go out of business, okay? So think about what I'm about to say from that standpoint. And that is this, and these are the tough issues that need to be spoken about, by the way. I want to go out and I want to get the best. I want to go out and get the best for my clients. I want to go out and get the best for me. I want to have confidence in the people that are going to work for me. And historically, over my past 30 years in this line of work, I have found time and time and time again that when you go out and you look for the best, the diversity takes care of itself. This is where I come down on this, okay? Having had to put my life in the hands of others that were different races, others that were different sexes, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I knew that the Secret Service was going out and looking for the best of the best, and that the diversity was going to take care of itself. When you start to implement quotas, it's no good. It does not work, because when you institute quotas, you end up lowering standards. And that's what happened. And that's why the director of the Secret Service at the time was forced to resign. Because you can't say, I want 30% of my workforce to be this race, this sex, that's not the way you do business, especially in the important work that the Secret Service has to do, and other agencies. And that's why you're seeing a lot of agencies now take a step away from that. It was the wrong way to go. What they were trying to do and who they were trying to appeal to were primarily comprised of politicians, because when you talk to people on the ground, guess what they want? They want the best of the best. Do you think that the people that were injured and the family of the firefighter that was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, do you think they want to hear about DEI? Mm-hmm. No, they wanted to know, wait a minute, we showed up here because we thought we had the best of the best. And so we need to get back as a profession and as a society doing things on the merits. There's something about that. And believe me, you're looking for, like I said earlier, the diversity of experiences, the diversity of background, and all of this it's essential to being able to do the job, because somebody's going to see something that I don't see, and I'm going to see something that another person may not see, and then you pull all of that together as a team, and that's where you make great strides. But if you're implementing an artificial forcing mechanism, it unbalances things, and not in a good way.
Well, let's talk about it, because you say the diversity takes care of itself, right? And so that's hard work to go do that. But your premise that diversity is important, right, and helps the organization, because companies don't want to fail, right? You don't want to bring people in that are not qualified. But how do you go out and do that whole work to find that diversity of that? And you're talking about a diversity that's all encompassing. You're not just talking about race. You're talking about a whole bunch. How do you do that work? Because that's really critical, right? And that is hard. That's not an easy thing to do. So if you could tell us that would be really
the first thing is the messaging. You have to tell people what you want. And of course, one of those words coming out from me is diversity. And what do I mean? Look, people's minds are gonna go to certain things. And some are gonna think sex, some are gonna think race. And diversity is so much bigger than that. I think it does an injustice to what diversity actually is and the experiences. Look, do I wanna hire everybody from New York City? I didn't work with everybody that was born and raised in New York City or 30 minutes away from Manhattan the way we are here. I was working with people that were raised on farms. I was working with people from all these different types of backgrounds, with all of these different types of experience, including the diversity of their previous jobs. So you gotta explain what you want sometimes. And it's amazing, sometimes you tell people what you want and you get what you're asking for. And so, you know, these agencies need to really be more vocal in what they're looking for. And I think to just say, yeah, look, we want a diverse workforce. Okay, well, tell me about it. What does that mean? I don't know what it means. I mean, it kind of leaves you guessing. And then I think that keeps the numbers stagnant. I think when you tell people, look, you don't need to be a criminal justice major to go into the profession of law enforcement and national security. You can come from any background. It doesn't matter. I've got students in my class that, you know, I can tell you out of the, you know, the 25, 28 that I teach, there's 5 to 6 of them every time they say, you know what? I'm actually pretty interested in this national security stuff now. Do you think I care what their background is, that I'm teaching an elective? And I say, no, you're taking business. No, I want them to have as wide of an aperture as they can.
Good. Let's switch a little bit and let's talk about, you know, you talked about protecting elected officials and others, right? High profile people at companies, and we look around and we look at social media. How does social media impact the job of protecting people, and how does it make, you know, that job more difficult or easier or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, people are more empowered than they've ever been to say what they're thinking. And what they're thinking sometimes, boy, I'll tell you, we see some things out there and it's a problem. Now granted, you know, I used to have to talk about this when you went out and we went out and conducted threat investigations. The first thing everybody would say to me is, well, I've got freedom of speech. Well, I got a news flash. Not all speech is free. Not all speech is protected. Actually, there is some speech that's a violation of the law. Okay? And people need to remember that. I think social media should be playing a greater role in helping to police for things like the violence we see at schools. You know, if you think about all these violent acts that are carried out, what's the first thing you hear the police department say? Well, we're going to go back and look at their social media. Right? Now, the question I get asked is, well, why isn't social media doing more? And the quick answer is, they don't have to. They have no liability. They're protected under something that's called the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, where Congress, politics, homeland security again, pay attention to it, where Congress said that the social media companies are not responsible for content posted on their platforms. Now, why would members of Congress put forth a bill like that into law to protect social media platforms? There you go. Go through and see who gets money from Facebook. Go see who gets money from X. Go see who gets money. Go look at it. They're petrified of this. And they should be. Because if you repeal Section 230, and you say you do have accountability for what's posted on your platform, especially when it comes to threats of violence, they're more obligated to report it. Otherwise, they can be held liable. So there's ways to get people more involved in this social media rhetoric. Congress just won't do it. Congress won't do it. And you know, again, this is the politics over doing the right thing. And so social media is a huge problem. These are huge platforms. And again, whether you're a government protected person or a private CEO, you know, you've got to pay attention to this stuff. And that's part of what I would call a holistic protection program. Now, keeping in mind that, you know, the President of the United States has to be protected. He has no say in that, right? CEOs are voluntary participants. They know that they need it. They come to us and say, here's what we'd like you to do. Can you assess it for us? But they also want to play a role in how it's done. And that's the difference between government and private sector.
And you discussed at the beginning of the seminar about Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare.
Yeah.
He was all by himself. He was walking, and you know, the Mangione was clearly staking him out. What would you have done and told him if you could have had his ear prior to the incident in terms of his security?
So there's ways of not doing something that you're told not to do by your boss, but still doing it. And so, you know, without specific knowledge of the resources that were on the ground here, it's hard to say. But what I can tell you is a response that you're seeing from corporations is now boards are starting to mandate protection for their executives. That's the forcing mechanism in the private sector. That's the equivalent of a statute in the government. You have the board saying, oh, you really don't want people around with you? Tough. Tough. This is a threat. We're going to assess it, and you're going to be given the appropriate resources to protect yourself. Because ultimately, what is the board worried about? Yes, the board is worried about the CEOs of the companies in which they serve. But they're also there to protect the brand, right? When you protect the brand, you're also protecting the people that work there. And think about a disruption to a brand and the disruption that was brought to United Healthcare. Right. The other bad thing is it was a success. And that brings forth what? Copycats. That brings forth an increased threat environment. Because when something is made to look easy, more people want to do it. This was the problem that the Secret Service had as a result of Butler, Pennsylvania. If you remember, shortly after that, down in Florida, you had the golf course incident, right? You can't make these things look easy. You can't. Then you want to see the crazies come out? That's when they'll come out. They'll say, are you kidding me? You mean I've got a chance? I can pull this off?
And I think it's more than just making it easy. It's a sense where certain people are actually glamorizing or taking the assassin as a hero in some respect, not in some respect, in respect. And I think that's even a more dangerous thing. And I think that's another aspect of social media where, you know, that this person now has become glorious. The person's a murderer, and I don't care about your political viewpoints. This person just killed another human being, right? And now the person's being glamorized in certain sectors, and I think that's even more problematic.
Yeah, it's a huge problem, and the bigger question is, why do people think this? I mean, is the vitriol at that level here in the United States? Is this really what we're becoming as a country? And I think the answer to that is yes. I think you saw some of it last night for those of you that watched the State of the Union. It's very hard to have a conversation these days without somebody getting up and feeling like they need to scream in your face or, make a threat of violence. And so things need to change, and the way that changes is it changes through accountability. And when you have accountability, it deters others from doing what some people are doing. And so, whether it's more consistently enforcing the laws of the country when it comes to crimes, whether there's greater accountability amongst all of us in our daily lives to say, what you just did is wrong and you shouldn't be doing that. And I'm gonna, I don't think the leadership of our company that you work for is gonna appreciate what you just did. And maybe that message is you no longer have your job. But we've lost this environment of where we don't wanna hold people to account. And everything's just okay, and, I don't wanna get sued, or, I don't wanna do the wrong thing here, and it's, people have to get back and make decisions. And part of that is deterrence.
I'm gonna ask you, maybe one or two more questions and then open up to audience, but we've had a very intentional and focused study here on our campus on artificial intelligence, AI, and that's, President Kerry's really led that. How is your company using AI in terms of maybe, background research or helping you in terms of providing protection?
Yeah, the thing with artificial intelligence is, it's one of these things where there's excitement, there's excited concern. We know all that it can do, and will continue to evolve. But we also know that adversaries are also using artificial intelligence. And so you can't look at the good ways, unfortunately, that a technology can be used. You also have to look at the bad ways. And we see this, we were just talking about social media, right? I mean, are we talking about the good way? I don't think we spoke about the good ways. I think we spoke about all the bad ways. And that's a problem. So social media has been hijacked. Some technologies can be hijacked and used for ill purposes. So, as I like to say, the jury's still out on that. You've got CISA over at DHS, the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is the cyber lead for DHS. That's looking at this and what are the risks that come with AI. We're already seeing it in terms of videos and things like that, but it gets a lot deeper than that in terms of what this intelligence can do and how it can be manipulated and how it can have negative consequences for the country. And so we're gonna see AI at a ground level. We're gonna see AI be used to socially engineer people out of money. People are gonna think they're talking to a loved one, asking for money to withdraw. So at an elementary level, we're gonna see the level of white collar street crime continue, but incorporate AI into it to make it easier, right? Where people are gonna say, well, yeah, of course I wired $100,000. My grandson called me and told me he was stuck in Thailand. And right, well, no, he was never there, and you should have called him first. That's just not the way the world works, and people are always gonna get victimized in that way. But at the larger level, AI is gonna require a level of authentication and a capability to authenticate things that we may be seeing that we think are real, which are not. adds a whole level of complexity. I mean, think about AI giving a country the perception that nukes were launched at it, right? And having 10 minutes to figure out, is that real or is it not? So, yeah.
That's, yes. Wow.
You won't sleep tonight now.
Well,
Sorry, Joe.
might have to take some Ambien. I want to open up to the audience to have their questions. Anybody? Aiden, are you all right, Aiden's going to come around with a microphone. Please just raise your hand if you have a question. Man right here.
So I know you were in the Secret Service, and we talk a lot about protection, and you went to Iona, and you've been to campus today. What are some things you would change to enhance the protection of the campus? Because as I see it now, it's a soft target, being that there's no like armed security or there's no actual security measures like a gate that are constantly down. I know we have New Rochelle Police Department down the road, but still, it takes time to get here. What would you say to change to make it a better location?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work in these types of environments, and you know, there's something to be said about an open campus, but to your point, that's unfortunately, based on everything that I've said here, it's the back of everybody's mind. And so there are a way to identify and mitigate risks while still maintaining a type of feel. But it would take a thorough assessment by my team to look at everything here and figure out what would need improvement or what is good. But what we do here, and first of all, you have to understand that the majority of college campuses are spread across urban environments anyway. It's very rare to have a campus like this. Like where I teach, the University of South Carolina, that is spread throughout the city of Columbia. That's a city of 150,000 people. You know, like when you have to walk sometimes, like you're going on a hike, and you better leave yourself time to get there. So it's, you know, this is unique in that, you know, you've got several ways into this campus that can all ultimately be controlled if you wanted them to be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One second, Matt, the mic is coming.
I bet you I could have heard.
What would you say the hardest part about starting a business was, and what do you like most about running a business?
Not majoring in business. So, you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes. And of course there's risk. There's risk with everything. You know, there's times of self-doubt. There's times of, am I delivering a service, a product that people really want? And is it gonna help people? And is it gonna deliver and meet the expectations of what people need? And so, you know, early on, you start to see, and you adjust. You guide your business. You know, maybe you think of your business as a little larger than it should be, and you say, well, I don't need to be this big. Maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe I can outsource that. Maybe I can, you know, refer business to a friend whose company does really, really good business. Say in like the security guard space, right? Like, do I really need to own that myself? No, I don't think so. I can advise on how to use it. I can advise my clients on when they need it, how to use it, and how to build it in to their security program, but do I actually need to have security guards reporting to me? No. So, you know, it's managing and establishing what you actually want the business to be, and how you want it to function, and who you want to be a part of it with you. You've got to work with good people. It's a stressful environment. It's just as busy as, when I was in the government. The level of travel is the same. The days are long, 12, 14 hours. And, a lot of stressful situations. You've got payroll now, right? You're responsible for people. They have families. And so you want people to get paid on time. You want people to get paid what they're worth. And otherwise, if you don't do that, you're not going to keep people.
Maybe the opposite question. I'd like your thoughts on, I think a lot of students the public sector is not always as interesting to them. They want to go into business. In my past place, NASA has a hard time competing with Blue Origin or SpaceX for talent. So what would you say to students or the opportunities in working for the government, public sector?
So the government would hate to hear me say this, but there is something to this micro-career approach that we're seeing. I'm doing it, but I'm doing it at a later stage in my life, and I'm willing to be that busy to do all of these interesting things that I enjoy. What people are doing now is they're not having a primary career. And there's a lot of impatience right now with the newer generation. If they don't like something, they're done with it. And they'll go try something else, maybe in the same field, or maybe something entirely outside of their comfort zone. That's hurting the government. It's hurting corporations too, to be honest with you. Gone are the days at corporations of getting the gold watch after 25 years. It's just not happening. And it's not happening in the government anymore either. Not when you can get this great training on the government side, the experience, and then bring it to the private sector. And then guess what? Maybe come back into the government. And then you know what? Then maybe leave again. I knock on wood because, we all want to live long lives. And there's a lot of time to do what you're interested in. And I didn't do that. I grew up where you had a career and you had a job and that's where you stayed. And that's what you did, and you invested in getting that job, and you didn't question anything, and then you left. And then, I just started saying, you know what, there's a lot of things, and I got lucky. I got challenged, right, with the news stuff. I got, hey, do you want to teach? Hey, do you want to write a book? Hey, do you want to, and I was like, I just started saying yes to everything. And, it's amazing. So I think to diversify your experiences and your intellect and your understanding of issues outside of your comfort zone is simply amazing, and I like it. I like the micro career approach. I think it makes, going back to accountability, I think it makes companies and the government more accountable to make sure that you're happy, that you feel that you're being productive in what you're doing, productive and rewarded.
All right, good. You want to ask one last question? Because I think it's time to wrap up. Now, did you have a question? You've asked one, but I want you two guys to come up and get a book, because we do have that too. You're Ali?
Yes.
From the drone class. So, man, I did a couple of guest lectures on weather in the drone class. I remember this, young man. Go ahead.
With the rapid advancement in AI, cybersecurity, and surveillance technology, how do you see these tools shaping the future of national security and law enforcement?
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. So I love technology. It's a big part of what my company does. We work with a lot of emerging technologies. So I could tell you technologies that you're going to see 3 to 5 to 7 years from now that are just going to blow your mind. Imagine not having to walk through a thing that screens you for weapons, but entering a room and just being in a room that is constantly screaming what's in there, and you don't even know what's going on. Like, that's what we're talking about. It's crazy. So I love the technology. Of course, with greater technologies, law enforcement, national security, you want to take advantage of it. Now, you know, if you're talking about public areas, then there's no concern, right? There's no expectation of privacy in public areas, public buildings, things like that. But as you're talking about these technologies being entertained by private corporations and things like that, that's where you start to get a lot of questions from employees, you know, your constituents, as I like to call them, other staff members, things like that. You know, I remember, pretty interesting, I helped with the design of a major NBA basketball arena, and we were implementing facial recognition for access control for the staff. And the city, I'll give it up now, the city of San Francisco basically said, none of our agencies can use facial recognition. We don't, our police department, any city agency, whether it's for law enforcement purposes, whether it's for access control, you're banned from using it. And I remember somebody from the city came up to me and said, yeah, you're not gonna be able to install facial recognition. And I said, you're dreaming. Of course we're gonna install it. This is a private facility. The decision's been made. Now, if it was a public-private, it would be different, right? So there's always complexities, like drones, right? You'll hear people say all the time, oh, just zap it out of the air. Well, last time I checked, it's not legal in the United States for a private entity to do that. It's really not even legal for most public agencies to do that. So, you know, when somebody comes in and says, oh, you know, the technology's out there, just do it. You know, my luck will be, I'll shoot down a drone, it'll be a 10-year-old kid flying it, and the kid's father will be the most powerful attorney in whatever, you know, city I do it in. So, you know, there are some legal requirements and laws that you've got to follow to make sure that you're not going astray of the law. But technologies are essential to, I think, making our national security, homeland security, private security more effective overall.
Thank you for the question, and Chuck, thank you
Thank you.
for this.
It was great. Thanks.